What would you say to those who are just kind of overly critiquing the film at this point? You've worked so hard on it.
Rachel Zegler is extraordinarily woke, but she's woke in a way that's quite deranged.
The people that we need to love into awareness.
No, the people who you need to entertain, the people who you need to serve, the people who pay your salary.
One moment, Rachel Zegler was everywhere, on red carpets, in interviews, starring in Disney trailers. The next, she vanished. No press tours, no tweets, no explanations, just radio silence. And the timing couldn't have been worse. Zegler had just led Snow White, Disney's latest high-stakes remake, a film that was supposed to reignite one of their most cherished stories. Instead, it bombed, not just underwhelmed, collapsed. At the box office, on social media, in the eyes of the very fans it was made for. What's even more bizarre, while Snow White quietly died, another movie, Minecraft, burst out of nowhere and dominated the global box office. A movie made of literal cubes crushed one of the biggest names in cinema history. And the star at the center of Disney's downfall? Gone. That's not just unusual.
It's not your job. Your job is to entertain. You are paid to entertain.
This movie was like you took the original Snow White and just put everything through this filter of liberalism.
That's suspicious. Because according to insiders, there's more to Rachel's disappearance than a mental health break. Behind her silence is a story of missteps, outrage, internal conflict at Disney, and a massive financial hit that still has execs pointing fingers. So where did she go? Why did Disney pull back so fast? And how did one of Hollywood's most hyped actresses become its most silenced? Let's go all the way back to where it started, with a rising star and a role she may have never fully wanted. Rachel Zegler was never supposed to be controversial. She wasn't a child star with baggage or an influencer-turned-actress. She was a Broadway-trained, Spielberg-approved talent who landed her first big role in West Side Story and blew critics away. The kind of debut most actors only dream about. So when Disney cast her as Snow White, the reaction was expected. Applause. It looked like the perfect casting. Fresh face, diverse background, vocal talent, critical acclaim.
They replaced the prince with a common criminal. So there is a prince-like figure, but he's no longer a prince, he's a criminal.
Disney saw her as the next Emma Watson or Zendaya, a new-gen princess who could bring something modern to a timeless story. But Zegler didn't just modernize the role, she publicly rejected it. Almost immediately, interviews surfaced of her criticizing the original Snow White. She said it was creepy, that the story was outdated, that her version wouldn't be about true love, it would be about leadership. In isolation, these comments might not have landed too badly, but it wasn't just what she said, it was how she said it. Audiences sensed contempt, like she thought the old story was beneath her, like the fans who loved it were part of the problem. Her tone came off dismissive, even smug. Social media took notice fast. TikTok clips spread. Reaction videos piled up. What was supposed to be a feel-good press tour became an endless parade of damage control. Zegler's image flipped overnight, from Disney darling to internet villain.
Every deviation from the original story was done for a reason. I guess what's so tedious about this movie is that every single deviation was in favor of liberalism, and a radical kind of liberalism at that.
And the worst part? She didn't stop. She doubled down in interviews, made sarcastic jokes about her costume, talked about being underpaid, seemed annoyed to even be in the film. And fans were asking, why take the role if you hated it so much? But the backlash wasn't just online anymore. Disney was watching. Executives were nervous. And behind the scenes, things were about to change. When Disney announced a reimagining of Snow White, fans expected a few modern tweaks. Maybe updated dialogue, a more independent lead, a refreshed look. But what they got felt like a completely different story wearing a familiar name. Gone was the classic tale of innocence, love, and magic. In its place stood something cold, political, and strangely self-aware. Snow White no longer dreamed of love. Now, she wanted to be a leader. The prince? Practically erased. The iconic dwarfs? replaced by a vague mix of magical forest people. Disney called it progress.
In order to go on and live this beautiful, happy life. Only a man could save her. The movie is problematic.
Do you really want to have an actor that gets involved with your movie that constantly brings up politics and then does it even inside of the advertising and the marketing of the career?
Fans called it erasure. And at the center of it all, Rachel Zegler, the face of the film, was more than happy to explain why the original was weird and problematic. She made it clear. She didn't like the original, she wasn't inspired by the story, and she thought the 1937 classic was irrelevant in 2025. The comments stung. For many, Snow White wasn't just a movie, it was a piece of childhood. Something passed down from parent to child. A symbol of Disney's origins. And suddenly, the star of the remake was treating it like a punchline. The backlash was relentless. Memes mocked her interviews. Comment sections exploded. Even casual fans began to ask, how did Disney get this so wrong? Zegler's tone, sarcastic, dismissive, unbothered, didn't help. At one point, she quipped about wanting to be paid for every hour she spent wearing the dress.
But you don't seemingly like your own character, so she comes off as an insufferable, whiny brat.
And now she's trying to reinvent herself because there's been so much blowback, and you can only imagine the studio calls about this woman behind the scene. Like, oh my God, we're $242 million in, and our lead actress hates our film, our actors, our storyline.
Another time, she brushed off romantic storylines entirely, implying they had no place in a modern fairy tale. The messaging was clear. This Snow White wasn't for the fans. It was for the press cycle. And that's when something shifted. People didn't just dislike the direction, they actively rooted against the movie. Viewers who might have watched out of curiosity stayed away on principle. Snow White wasn't just getting criticized, it was being rejected. Loudly, and while Disney tried to stay the course behind closed doors, the studio was preparing for impact. At Disney, red flags don't go unnoticed, and this time, they were everywhere. Internally, executives had hoped the controversy around Rachel Zegler's interviews would blow over. But instead of cooling down, it snowballed. Her clips were everywhere, and not in a good way. Every new soundbite made headlines, sparked commentary videos, and fueled memes. Zegler had unintentionally become the poster child for what fans called Hollywood arrogance, and suddenly, Disney had a serious problem. The face of their film was turning people off. PR teams went into overdrive, scheduled appearances were canceled, media partners were told to pause coverage. Interviews vanished from lineups. Quietly, Disney began scrubbing any future promotion featuring Zegler. Behind the scenes, damage control meetings were happening daily. According to insiders, executives were livid, not just because of the bad press, but because they feared she was violating parts of her promotional contract. Some even brought up potential morality clause breaches, the kind that let studios pull funding, bonuses, or future roles if an actor becomes too controversial. One particular incident lit a fuse, a tweet. After posting a promotional message praising her excitement for Snow White, Zegler immediately followed up with a Free Palestine tweet. The timing was explosive, especially with co-star Gal Gadot's known Israeli background. Sources say a Disney producer personally contacted Zegler and asked her to take the tweet down. She refused. For a company as image-conscious as Disney, this wasn't just uncomfortable, it was catastrophic. Suddenly, the marketing wasn't about the movie, it was about controlling the damage. The film's press tour fell apart. Media outlets were told to stop asking questions. Rachel? She stopped posting entirely. Within days, her schedule went dark. And then, she disappeared. Reports leaked that Zegler had flown overseas, retreating to Dubai as Disney scrambled to recover. Her social media? Silent. No statements, no apologies. At that point, fans weren't just confused, they were suspicious. Was this a planned break? Or a calculated escape? While the backlash around Snow White and Rachel Zegler raged, an entirely different film was pulling off a stunning upset. Enter the Minecraft movie, a project dismissed by critics as a low-budget cash grab even before its debut. No scandal, no diva on set, just a simple, quirky adaptation of one of the world's most beloved video games. And it worked in a way that utterly defied expectations. The concept was almost laughable on paper. A movie built around pixelated blocks? With characters that looked like they belonged in a sandbox game? Industry insiders and fans alike were skeptical. Early buzz predicted a lukewarm reception and expected the film to struggle against the massive hype surrounding Disney's troubled remake. But then, opening weekend arrived, and the movie's performance was nothing short of explosive. Audiences flocked to theaters in record numbers, proving that there was a hunger for something unpretentious, fun, and free from the heavy-handed messaging that plagued Snow White. The film's modest production value became its charm, offering a lighthearted escape that resonated with families, gamers, and even casual viewers looking for a feel-good story. With a global debut exceeding $300 million, Minecraft proved that authenticity and a clear understanding of its core audience trumped flashy star power and over-polished narratives. Critics offered mixed reviews, many giving it a mediocre score on aggregate sites. Yet, the word-of-mouth buzz was overwhelmingly positive. Audiences celebrated the film's ability to stay true to the spirit of the game, packing theaters with laughter, nostalgic excitement, and genuine delight. In stark contrast, Snow White continued to struggle, its promotional efforts marred by controversy and an alienation of its once loyal fanbase. As headlines began flashing messages like "Blockbuster beats Disney" and "Pixels over princesses," it became clear that the triumph of Minecraft was more than just a box office upset. It was a cultural phenomenon. The film wasn't merely a commercial hit, it was a statement. When studios focus on what truly entertains, rather than peddling heavy narratives or chasing trends, audiences respond with resounding enthusiasm. And so, as Disney's flagship project faltered under the weight of its controversies, the unexpected success of the Minecraft movie highlighted a stark reality in today's entertainment landscape. Simplicity, authenticity, and a deep understanding of your audience can outshine even the most storied of legacies. It wasn't supposed to end like this. Disney had banked everything on Snow White: legacy, budget, and star power. It was meant to be a guaranteed hit, a celebration of the studio's roots brought to life for a new generation. But instead of rewriting history, it became one of the biggest flops in Disney's modern era. The numbers were humiliating. Snow White reportedly cost over $200 million to produce, with another $100 million dumped into marketing. Yet despite the massive push, the film failed to find its audience. Within just a few weeks, it barely crawled past $160 million globally, and trending downward. Meanwhile, Minecraft had already blown past the $300 million mark in its opening weekend, with strong legs and positive word of mouth carrying it even further. Industry analysts estimated that Snow White could end up losing the studio upwards of $250 million. To make matters worse, insiders revealed that this was more than just a box office failure. It was an internal embarrassment. Executives reportedly held emergency meetings to determine what went wrong, and more importantly, who to blame. And the answer was clear: Rachel Zegler. She became the lightning rod for the film's failure. Online threads dubbed her the reason Disney lost $1 billion brand. The sound bites, the interviews, the tone, all of it came back to haunt her. The costume complaints, the deserve to be paid for every hour in the dress moment, the dismissive attitude toward romance and fairy tales. Fans weren't just unhappy with the movie, they were actively rooting for it to fail. When Zegler finally issued a half-hearted apology, it only made things worse. It read like it came straight from a crisis PR firm. It was cold, mechanical, and utterly lacking emotion. Viewers could see right through it. There was no vulnerability, no sense of learning, no connection, just another lifeless statement in an already soulless campaign. And Disney knew it. Instead of defending their lead, they went quiet. The silence from the studio was deafening. A sign that, behind closed doors, they were distancing themselves. Fast. What had started as a fairy tale was now a full-blown financial and reputational disaster. And while Minecraft kept stacking box office wins, Disney was left picking up the pieces. By the time Snow White officially bombed, Rachel Zegler had disappeared. No new interviews, no tweets, no Instagram stories, not even a vague "thank you for the support" message. she'd gone completely dark. A digital ghost. At first, fans thought maybe she was just laying low. But then reports surfaced. Zegler had flown overseas, with some sources claiming she'd retreated to Dubai. No press, no public statements, not even from her management. Her calendar was wiped clean. People weren't just curious anymore, they were suspicious. According to industry insiders, Disney had pulled the plug behind the scenes. Executives reportedly discussed whether her behavior during promotion had violated her contract. That morality clause, usually reserved for extreme cases, was suddenly on the table. There were even whispers that the studio might demand repayment of part of her compensation. Why? Because some believed she didn't just underperform, she actively hurt the film. Her interviews were replayed more than the actual trailers. Her quotes had done more damage than any review. And at a time when the studio needed unity, she went rogue. Internally, Rachel's team was said to be divided. One side urged her to take control of the narrative, go public, and reframe the backlash, maybe even lean into the underdog angle. But the other side? They wanted her to vanish, to disappear completely and let the storm pass. And for now, that second camp seems to have won. But her silence wasn't calming anyone down. In fact, it made things worse. Internet sleuths began dissecting her last few posts, digging into every deleted tweet, searching for signs of what really happened. Some claimed she was having a breakdown. Others speculated the studio forced her into hiding to prevent more damage. Regardless of what the truth is, one thing was clear. This wasn't a standard PR pause. It was a coordinated vanishing act. And it was working, not because it solved the problem, but because it shifted all the focus onto one question. What is Rachel Zegler hiding?